The Appalachian Trail stretched ahead, swallowed by the creeping darkness of the forest. The cool night air carried the scent of damp earth, and every step the group took sent dry leaves crackling beneath their boots. The wind hummed through the trees, a soft, whispering sound that should have been soothing, but something about this place felt off. Laura shivered, rubbing her arms as she hurried to keep up with the others. "I don't like this," she murmured. "Hiking at night feels wrong." Ethan, leading the group, rolled his eyes. "Come on, Laura. It's just a trail. We've done this before." "Not this trail," Mark muttered, adjusting his backpack. "And not at this hour." Rachel, the most adventurous of them, smirked. "That's what makes it fun." She shined her flashlight along the trees. "Besides, this place has history, legends. That's why we picked it, remember?" Mark scoffed. "Yeah, because nothing bad ever happens when people ignore local legends." As they moved deeper into the woods, the canopy thickened, swallowing the moonlight. The shadows between the trees stretched impossibly long, and an unsettling hush settled over the trail. Then, just ahead, they spotted a weathered wooden sign nailed to a tree. Rachel stepped closer, wiping away the moss that obscured the faded letters. Her flashlight flickered over the words, "If you hear the owl's call, do not answer." She let out a short laugh. "Seriously?" Laura took a step back. "Guys, maybe we should turn around." Ethan shrugged. "It's just a stupid sign." Somewhere in the distance, a soft, rhythmic hoot echoed through the trees. A single owl calling in the night. Rachel smirked. "See? Just nature doing its thing." And they kept walking. The group pressed forward, their flashlights cutting thin beams through the thickening darkness. The path was narrow now, winding between towering trees that seemed to lean inward, closing them off from the outside world. Then the owl called again, a slow, deliberate hoot, soft but strangely off. It wasn't quite like any owl Rachel had ever heard before. The rhythm was there, but the tone was wrong. Too deep, almost hollow. Laura stopped dead in her tracks. "Did you hear that?" "It's just an owl," Ethan said, but his voice lacked confidence. Mark's grip on his flashlight tightened. "No, it's not." Rachel, ever the skeptic, grinned. "Come on, guys. You're acting like we're in some horror movie." She lifted her phone and started recording. "Listen to this. I bet I can look it up later and prove it's just a weird species or something." As if in response, the owl called again. This time, much closer. The group froze. The sound hadn't come from above, where owls should be. It had come from ahead, somewhere deep within the trees. Rachel lowered her phone. "Okay, that was..." A branch snapped in the distance, then another. Footsteps? No, something moving between the trees, shifting unnaturally fast. Laura swallowed hard. "We need to leave. Now." Ethan hesitated, his logical mind wrestling with the growing unease in his gut. "Let's just..." The owl call rang out again, cutting through the night. Closer. Too close. This time, Mark swore under his breath. "That's not an owl." The air around them felt heavier, like the forest itself was pushing in. The wind had died, leaving only silence, the sound of their own breathing. Then Rachel's flashlight flickered over something up ahead, a shape, just barely visible beyond the trees. It was gone before she could process it, but the weight in her chest told her something had been there, watching. The flashlight's beam trembled slightly in her grip. "Guys," she whispered, for the first time letting a sliver of fear creep into her voice. "Maybe we should keep moving." The group quickened their pace, their footsteps crunching against the damp forest floor. No one spoke, but the tension between them was thick, pressing against their chests like a growing weight. Mark kept glancing over his shoulder, his breathing shallow. The owl call hadn't come again, but the silence was worse. It was waiting. Rachel's flashlight cut through the darkness, sweeping the trail ahead, until it landed on something unexpected. A structure. Wait, Ethan said, stopping. What is that? Just off the trail, nestled between the trees, sat a small wooden shelter. The walls were weathered, the roof sagging under years of decay. A faded symbol was carved above the door, an eye, wide open. Rachel moved first, stepping onto the rickety porch. Looks abandoned. Which means we shouldn't go inside, Laura hissed. But Rachel was already pushing the door open. Inside, dust hung in the air, disturbed by their arrival. Old camping gear lay scattered, untouched for what looked like decades. On a makeshift table sat a journal, its pages curled and yellowed with age. Rachel picked it up, flipping through the entries. Her brow furrowed. Guy, this is weird. Mark hovered near the door, unwilling to step inside. How weird? Rachel read aloud. I heard it last night. The owl that is not an owl. It called to me. I answered. The next entry was messier, the handwriting frantic. It knows me now. It waits. It mimics. Rachel turned the page. The final words were scrawled so deeply into the paper that the ink had torn through. If you answer, it comes. A cold chill ran through the group. Mark stepped back. Screw this. We're leaving. Now. But before anyone could move, Rachel smirked, tilting her head back, and answered the call, a perfect imitation of the owl's hoot. The forest went completely still. For a moment, nothing happened. Rachel lowered her chin, grinning. See? Nothing to... The forest exhaled. A gust of wind surged through the trees, rattling the shelter's decayed walls. Dust swirled in the dim light of their flashlights. But it wasn't the wind that made their blood run cold. It was the silence. No rustling leaves, no distant insects, no sounds at all. Ethan took a shaky step back. Rachel, that was a really bad idea. Mark's hands were clenched into fists. We need to leave. Right now. Rachel swallowed, her bravado slipping. Guys, calm down. It's just... A branch snapped outside the shelter. Then another. The sound was deliberate, slow, heavy. Mark pointed his flashlight toward the door, and the beam caught something just beyond the threshold. Movement. Something was standing among the trees, not fully visible but watching. Laura let out a shaky breath. That wasn't there before. Then it moved. A shadow shifting between the trunks, too fast, too fluid. Not walking, but gliding. The owl call rang out again, but this time it was right outside the shelter. Rachel's breath hitched. That wasn't me. The call came again, closer, layered, like multiple voices overlapping. Then, through the slats of the broken window, a shape appeared. Two eyes, low and inhumanly wide, reflecting the light. They weren't watching anymore. They were coming. Run! Ethan's voice barely escaped his throat before something slammed against the shelter's wall. The rotten wood groaned under the force, dust raining from the ceiling. Rachel bolted for the door, nearly tripping over herself. Mark and Laura were right behind her, but Ethan hesitated just long enough to see a shadow pass by the window. It was tall, too tall, and it moved wrong, like it had too many joints, too many limbs. Then it hooted. The sound was wrong, almost mocking. That was enough. Ethan ran. They tore down the trail, their flashlights bouncing wildly. The trees blurred into a tunnel of darkness. Footsteps pounded behind them, but they weren't sure if it was one thing or many. Rachel risked a glance over her shoulder. Her stomach dropped. It was moving between the trees, not running, leaping. A shadow flickered from one trunk to another, impossibly fast. It didn't touch the ground. Rachel screamed. Mark veered left, nearly tripping over an exposed root. We need to get to the main trail. Laura's breath came in ragged gasps. It's her fault. She answered it. It knows her now. Rachel's chest tightened with panic. What if Laura was right? Ahead, the trail forked. Two paths stretched into the void. Ethan skidded to a stop, chest heaving. Which way? Another hoot. Closer. Then, from behind them, Rachel's voice. Guys, wait. Rachel froze. She hadn't spoken. The others turned, their faces drained of color. "Guys, please!" The voice came from the trees, Rachel's exact voice. But it wasn't her. The thing wasn't just following them anymore. It was learning. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. The voice calling from the trees. It was hers. Exactly hers. The same pitch, the same panic. "Guys, please, don't leave me." Laura whimpered, her flashlight shaking in her grip. "It's copying you." Rachel couldn't move, couldn't think. The thing knew her voice now. Then the sound of branches snapping, fast, too fast, coming straight for them. Mark grabbed Rachel's arm. "Run!" They took the left path, sprinting blindly through the dark. Their legs burned, lungs aching, but the thing was right behind them. They could hear it above, moving through the canopy, keeping pace without touching the ground. Ahead, a small wooden patrol cabin emerged through the trees. "There!" Ethan shouted. They reached the door and slammed it shut behind them. Mark threw the latch, locking it. The only sound was their heaving breaths. Silence. Laura pressed her back to the wall, tears in her eyes. "Where's Rachel?" Ethan turned. The cabin was one person short. His stomach dropped. Rachel was gone. A distant hoot echoed outside. It wasn't an owl. It wasn't Rachel. But it still sounded just like her. The cabin was cold and still, the air thick with fear and disbelief. Ethan's mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. How had Rachel disappeared so quickly? There was no sound outside now, no calls, no movement, just a suffocating silence that pressed in on them. Mark's eyes darted around the cabin, unwilling to let himself settle. "We can't stay here, it'll find us." Laura trembled beside him, her face pale. "But Rachel, she's gone." Ethan clenched his fists. "We're not leaving without answers." But just as he spoke, a sudden chime of a phone shattered the stillness. It was Rachel's phone, lying on the floor by the door, still recording. The last message it captured was a haunting echo of her voice, faintly calling for help. But there was something else. A low whisper. Not Rachel. Something else. Ethan bent down and picked it up. He pressed play. "Rachel?" The voice on the recording sounded like her, but warped, twisted. It was not her. It was the thing that had been following them. And then, a new voice, a distorted version of Rachel's, echoed through the speakers. "It's too late now." The recording cut off. A soft hoot lingered from outside, quieter now, as if it were waiting. Ethan looked at Mark and Laura, the fear in his eyes growing darker. "That's it. We've answered the call." And the call was no longer theirs to ignore. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on more stories like this. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know what you thought of the story. Did it send shivers down your spine? Your feedback means a lot to us.